Recording. Very good. So in our prep session, we came to the conclusion that a, a great goal for today is to have a sense of an overview of the landscape of the issues that one can encounter and all this stuff. You're not going to come away with a complete understanding because this is a big topic, but hopefully you'll have a sense of where to hunt and look and what questions and to come up with um, uh, how to ask the questions to lawyers and consultants and retailers. So the way we're going to do this today is Joel, we're going to have some presenters and they're going to go through and share, and we'll have some time for questions. However, we're going to put a big caveat on the questions. Maura can't give legal advice in a public forum. So we're going to see how we can give some broad principles without talking about specific situations. Um, so today we've got Joel Harper, who is currently a consultant and has been the owner of several manufactured home communities. He's the past president of the New York Housing Association, which is the Manufactured Home Community Trade Association. And he is also a mobile home retailer. And we also have Maura McGuire, and she does, her specialty is the legal compliance work around manufactured home communities. So we're going to kick off first with Joel Harper. Joel.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone this evening?
Good. How are you?
I am going to do my best to cover some of the stuff about infill in communities. I'm going to try and go fairly quickly with some of this stuff because I feel like Maura's piece on zombie homes is more of what you guys are here for. But I want to give you a little bit of background first as it pertains to infill. So hopefully everybody can see my screen at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Should see it says infill for manufactured housing communities. So my presentation is really about filling spaces. A long time ago, I hired a marketing firm, and one of the first things they wanted me to do was get down to what my core business was. And I got that down to 3 words. I rent spaces. Manufactured housing communities, that's what you guys are interested in. You're interested in renting spaces because if you don't rent spaces, you don't have a business. So how do we rent those spaces? There's a lot of different ways we can rent those spaces, but the first things we need to figure out are, what are our guidelines? What are we going to accept for homes? And then we're going to talk a little bit about new homes. We're going to talk a little bit about used homes, and we're going to talk about advertising. So, what kind of home and how do I let people know that I have those homes available? First is the guidelines. Does your community have guidelines in place for what type of home you will accept into the community? So are those in your rules and regulations? Do you require vinyl siding? Do you require shingle roof? Do they have to be a manufactured home? And manufactured homes are legally defined in New York as being homes built after June 15th, 1976, according to the HUD code. Mobile homes were the ones that were built before that. Your town that you do business in may not even accept mobile homes because they're too old. So something to think about first, if you're going to accept homes into your community that you don't put there is, what kind of home will you accept? So is there an age? Is there size? Do you only want to accept multi-section homes? You don't want to accept single wides. Is there a door placement requirement? Do you want doors on the front or only on the side? What kind of foundations are you going to accept? Do you want a slab in your community? Some communities only want slab. Some communities only want footer. Those are the foundational systems underneath the homes. So what kind of foundations do you want to accept into your property? All things to think about if you haven't thought about if someone from the outside of your community is going to bring a home in. So those are the kinds of things you need to think about. So the next thing, as I said, I was going to talk about new homes. So the first thing to know about new homes is that New York State requires anyone who sells a manufactured home in New York State to be certified. So there is an actual class that you have to attend. There's some experience requirements that go into that. So the first thing is, you had to have been in the industry for at least 1 year or have done something similar to the selling of a manufactured home. So if you've been in real estate before, or you've been in some kind of retail sales, that certainly is acceptable. You have to be a high school graduate. So there are some requirements to what exactly you have to do to be certified. It's a 3-hour class. It's offered all the time. The first 6 months of the year, it's offered online, so you need to leave your house. But the big thing to know is that you do have to be certified by law to sell manufactured homes in New York State. The next thing to know is that new homes are expensive. The average cost of a new home is approximately $45,000. And that's, when I say average new home, that means that it doesn't have a lot of amenities to it. It's going to be the entry level house, and they go up from there. Anybody who watches the news sees the cost of raw materials going up every day. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that, homes are expensive. Setup is also expensive. Average cost of a setup these days is about $20,000. I've talked to some retailers, and that's pretty much across the board, that it does cost about $20,000 to set up a manufactured home. Lead time is also an issue. Again, anybody who watches the news knows that the supply chain is slow these days. The manufacturers I've talked to that will accept new customers are saying anywhere from 7 to 8 months, if you were to order right now, is when you would get that new home. So that is another issue if you're thinking about using new homes for infill, is that if you ordered it in October, you're probably not going to see it until June of next year. So that's, again, something to consider with that infill. And also, are people looking for housing in your market? I know it seems weird, but there are some markets that people aren't looking for houses. So, do you have a market? If you're going to order a new home, do you have people that are looking to spend $80,000 to $90,000 for a new manufactured home in your community? If it's the kind of money that you're going to spend, you need to make sure that those are the kind of people that are looking to live in your community. So talked about certification, homes. Okay, so used homes. Homes that have been lived in before. You'll see most in publications don't like to use the word used homes. They'd like to use the word pre-owned, previously enjoyed. Pre-loved is a new one I've seen some, but all it means is really that somebody has lived there before. New York State requires you to be certified even if you're selling pre-owned homes. So it doesn't matter whether you're selling new homes or pre-owned homes, you still are going to need to be certified. Obviously, those homes are less expensive. So, they're ready to go, but how do you find them? There's no lead time issues because, they're already available. But again, are people looking for housing in your market? So talked about certification. The money issue, excuse me, again, really it's, what is your budget and what is your appetite for the kind of money that you want to spend? So do you have that money to spend on your property, knowing that it could be a while before you sell that house? And again, do you have a market for those homes? So that's a question you need to ask is, do you have a market for people to bring in homes? And again, if you're going to deal in used homes, what do your community guidelines say about what kind of home it is that you want to bring into your community? You have a say as the property owner as to what kind of homes come into your property. So you can have those guidelines be whatever you want them to be. And the big key here is advertising. The easiest way to fill those spaces is to advertise that you have them. So do you have retailers in your area that are looking to bring homes into your community? There's lots of retailers in the state that are what we call street dealers that are happy to place homes into communities. And at that point, that's not a money issue for you because you don't have to buy that house. So you can have that retailer bring the house in. So, but let people know that you have spaces available if you're looking to fill them. Some links from my presentation. The first is the Department of State's website. That is the area to go to find out more about licensing. So they have a whole website there that tells you how to sign up for classes and what kind of paperwork you're going to need. I heard John mention it earlier, but the New York Housing Association is an excellent resource. They have links to manufacturers and retailers in your area. So you can search them to see what kind of manufacturers and retailers are available in your area, so you can get homes. The third one I haven't talked about yet, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this one. So the Division of Housing and Community Renewal, they are responsible for our industry from the standpoint of complaints for tenants, but also they have a program right now called the Manufactured Home Replacement Program. So they have a program that you can apply to that they will give you money for replacing older manufactured homes in your community. There are some restrictions about rent increases, but with the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act of 2019 limiting you to a 3% increase, the HCR's program pretty much lines up right with that same number. So it's really not an issue from the standpoint of the rent increase issue, but it is a fund. The last I knew, they had approximately $10 million available to people for the replacement program. So that is definitely a resource that you would want to check out for your info program to say that, hey, you know, this is money I'd like to apply for. As I said, I'm trying to get through it fairly quickly to give Maura some time, but I figured I could open it up to some questions before Maura starts her presentation.
Can we get that PowerPoint? Can you send it to us?
Absolutely. I shared it with John already, so I'm sure John can
Perfect.
send it to you.
Great.
I'll share
Yeah,
that.
that's good.
Any other questions? I know I had one. So certification is for individuals only, and so in a corporation, the corporation doesn't get certified, an individual within the corporation does.
So the way that works for certification is that you have to be a certified, I'll use retailer as an example. So if you want to be a certified retailer, there has to be an entity that's certified. So for instance, MHC Consultants is the certified retailing entity. So they are certified as a retailer entity. I, Joel Harper, am a limited certified retailer working for that certified entity. So you have to have the entity, and the entity has to employ at least one certified person.
So the resident-owned corporations, resident-owned communities can partner with a retailer, a certified retailer, or they can create a corporate spinoff.
Correct.
Okay.
And an individual could do that as well, where the individual is their own entity. So it could be Joel Harper, certified entity, and then Joel Harper, limited certified retailer working for a limited entity, Joel Harper.
Cool.
You just have to do both. There's two applications, you have to do both, and the limited person has to complete the class.
So for most of us, the best situation is to get a retailer to bring a home in and have them actually do the sale.
Yeah.
That would be easier for any individual, yes, would be to partner with the retailer to bring in that home, to sell it, do the paperwork, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you just put one home in a year, then you don't need to be certified? That's per year?
The law states that if you sell one home, you need to be certified. The practical matter is that the Department of State would generally allow an individual to sell one home if they own it. So the state generally won't come after you and penalize you if you sell one home, but if you sell more than one home a year, they're going to demand that you be certified. And the fines for selling a manufactured home without a certification are onerous. They're
Well-
$3,000 for each home that you sell. And then it's $3,000 for each piece of paper that you don't get for that deal, because there's paperwork that goes along with it. So the average fine for somebody who sells a manufactured home without our certification has been about $25,000.
Wow.
And if you only made $10,000 on the deal, you didn't make $10,000.
Right. Well, if like we just put a new home in before COVID, we bought the home through the park, through Marilla Country Village. We had it set up by, licensed certified contractors. The company we bought it from was a retailer, McLaughlin's. And then after it was all installed, then we sold it. So how does that all loop around? Does that mean we bought the house and then we sold it after?
Yes.
So McLaughlin's really was the installer.
McLaughlin's is the installer, but whoever was present when the contract was signed was acting as a retailer.
Okay, so here's a question. We have a bunch of empty mobile homes we're trying to move. Do we have to become certified in order to do that?
To move them off of the property,
No, to get
To
people
sell-
into them.
to
Yeah.
sell them, yes, you need to be a certified retailer to sell those homes.
Oh, okay.
Wow. We've sold several in this park because they were already here. Nobody was certified to do that.
Yeah, that's been the law of the land in New York State since 2005.
Well, we're in trouble then.
Yeah, it's the first I've heard of it. So,
Well,
Uh,
with all things,
we've sold
you can
several
always,
that were
you can always go
vacated.
back. The big question is whether you got the correct paperwork, because that's going to be the key, because there's legal notifications that have to happen with the retail sale. For instance, there's a dispute resolution program in New York State that's required that the person buying that manufactured home is notified that they are part of a dispute resolution program. That has to happen prior to the sale. So if you didn't have them sign the fact that they're part of a dispute resolution program and that they have rights under that program, you violated the law. There's an installation disclosure form that's required to say that the home was installed according to both the HUD code and to the manufacturer's installation instructions. That has to be done prior to anybody accepting money. So again, those are federal mandates that are backed up by New York State law. So again, those are the kinds of things that you need to make sure that if you're going to sell homes that you do. And that's part of the certification program, is to educate you to the fact that there's federal forms that you have to have people fill out as part of any sale.
how come our lawyer doesn't seem to know any of this?
My answer to that is that manufactured home law is a very specific part of the law, and it's not something that's generally taught in law school. So it's the kind of thing that, any lawyer that takes on a job, in my opinion, should educate themselves about the law that they're representing. So
Yeah.
if you are going to take on a customer to sell manufactured homes and you're going to advise them, you should educate yourself about the law. And Maura, I'm sure you can speak to that when you have your presentation. And Maura was my attorney when I owned communities. I'm sure that Maura had a steep education curve when we first started working together.
Now, if it's the homeowner selling the home, that we don't have to, there's nothing that we have to do as the corporation.
By the definition of the law, the homeowner is also supposed to be certified to sell their home, because it literally says anybody who sells a manufactured home must be certified. However, I can't imagine the Department of State going after a homeowner for selling the home that they own.
Right.
So,
I mean,
so
the realtors most of them are sold by a realtor. So
a realtor is exempt from the certification process because they have a real estate license.
okay.
If a realtor has a real estate license, they are exempted. They're not exempted from the paperwork. They still have to make sure the paperwork gets signed, but they're exempted from being certified because they have a real estate license.
Okay, I want to ask a question. We've had at least 5 homes that the park itself acquired because people moved out left the houses. They were rental properties at the time when we bought, and we sold them. I think for the most part, they went through realtors. So we're okay as far as some of the certification.
If a realtor sold the house, as long as the paperwork was done correctly, then everybody's fine. It's
Okay.
because again, they
Do
are
most
exempted.
do most realtors know about this stuff? I bought my house a number of years ago. I don't remember there ever being anything said about any of it.
So I started training for certification for New York, because I do certification trainings for New York State, and I've been doing them since December of 2017. And my answer to that is, not only do realtors not know about this paperwork, the people in our industry that sell homes don't know anything about this paperwork for the most part either. However, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So just because you didn't know that the paperwork had to be filled out doesn't mean that if they catch up with you that you won't get in trouble for having not filled out the paperwork.
Right. What if you're,
So if we have a realtor to come in to buy, say we have a house that comes up, and I don't think we have that situation anymore, but comes up, we need to make sure that our realtor is aware of this stuff.
That is correct.
It has not been that case up till now, as far as I'm aware.
And again, this is, these requirements are not new, unfortunately. I mean, they were in, so the law that it actually is Article 21B of the executive law. And that was all detailed in that law back in 2005 that went into effect in 2006. So these are not new documents. They've been revised over time, but they are not new documents. So, and what I can do, and in the interest of time and letting Maura get to her presentation, I'd be happy to stay a little bit after Maura's presentation to answer more questions, or we can schedule another time to talk about these things, because again, this is the kind of thing that we could talk about for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, Joel is a consultant and he is available to be hired to consult on this stuff.
And
Can I
I've been
just
doing it
ask
for
a
a
quick
long time.
question?
So, yes, ma'am.
I came in late and I apologize for that. But what I'm just hearing, we have a home here at Brittany Terrace that's being sold privately. How does that?
Again, if it's a home that's sold privately, I mean, the law is pretty clear that anybody that sells a home has to be certified. But from a practical standpoint, a private sale is not something that the Department of State is going to go after somebody for. They're really more concerned about the retailer, the community owner who's selling a bunch of homes. They want to make sure that the correct paperwork is done and that people are aware of their rights.
So how do we know that we have the right paperwork being done for that private sale?
As a consultant, I would be happy to consult with you to help you get that paperwork figured out and correct.
Okay.
And Carol, I'm recording this, so you'll be able to go back and watch the beginning that you missed.
Oh, good, great. I'm sorry. I apologize for.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I do have another question.
I just want to pipe in that it's 6:27, so we get a time check, and I definitely want to allow Maura to get in here. But I'm hearing someone ask for one last question.
I have one last question, and I'll be quiet. Rock is kind of in charge of us. If Rock knew about this, why were we not informed of this?
So
Rock must be aware of this.
So just some vocabulary. You are a Rock. You're a resident-owned community. Rock USA is Rock USA Capital is your bankers. They're not in charge of you. They have certain guidelines and parameters around.
But they tell us what to do, so I'm missing.
Well,
out.
they have parameters about what you can do with your rules and certain financial things, because that's the rules they'll put in place as a condition of lending you the money. And also they make sure that you have, as a condition, they make sure you have a technical assistant. So here I am doing my job, having this educational workshop so that you can know about this. So we're good.
Okay.
We're we're rolling.
And I would imagine that's part of the reason why you're having these educational meetings, that is to learn these exact kind of issues that you may have. So, happy to be here and help with that stuff. But at this point, I'm going to hit mute on my microphone so Maura can get to her presentation.
Thanks, Joel. Hi, everyone. I have a short PowerPoint for you too that hopefully will make this easier for you all to digest. So if you give me 1 second to share my screen. That is not the right one, is it?
Did I lose the group?
Who just asked if they lost the group? Is everyone still here?
Are we still here? I'm not
Yeah.
hearing anything. So
I don't, okay.
Okay, well, I can't get the screen to share, but that's okay. Sometimes our lovely,
You succeeded in getting the screen before. Oh, okay.
there we go. Okay, so I'm an attorney at Morgan Stern DeVosick. We are located in Rochester, New York. My practice areas, as John said, are manufactured housing communities compliance, commercial litigation, and real estate litigation. That includes when HCR is involved in unfortunately suing one of our community owners. Our firm is primarily a real estate firm. We do banking and commercial lending, corporate and business, estate planning, and real estate development and real estate transactions, which is how we got involved in manufactured housing in the first place. Our firm represents many buyers and sellers of manufactured homes, which means that we need to know what we're doing to advise them whether what they're buying or selling is compliant with New York State law. So I was asked by John to talk to you guys about what park owners can do about abandoned homes. And there is a specific law, as there often is in New York, about exactly what to do to remove an abandoned manufactured home. It's in the Real Property Actions and Proceeding Law. It's in Article 7B, and it allows for a special proceeding to remove the abandoned manufactured home from your community. So the law is specific that it's a special proceeding. A special proceeding is a type of lawsuit that is created by statute to make things easier and faster in theory. So it's not a full-blown civil lawsuit. It's something a little bit different. You should definitely make sure that if you go forward with a proceeding like this, that you have an attorney who understands what a special proceeding is and how they need to be accomplished. So when can you file a petition to remove an abandoned home from your community? That is set out in the Real Property and Proceedings Law, Section 792, which is the text that's on your screen, just abridged a little bit for readability. Obviously, New York statutes aren't always the most user-friendly things in the world to read. So in order for you to petition to have an abandoned manufactured home removed from your community, the home has to be vacant for at least 180 days, okay? Unless there was a warrant of eviction, and then it only has to be vacant for 90 days. So when you look at bullet point number 1, the best practical advice I have for you is to document everything, right? Because a lot of times people will say, well, I think it's been empty for about 4 months. But if you're going to have to prove to a court that it has been abandoned for 180 days, you better have some good notes, some pictures, some video about when you first noticed that the people there were gone. that it was abandoned. The second one is easy for you to document, and it's that the resident has defaulted in the payment of rent during those 180 or 90 days, right? As the community owners, you will know who is not paying rent. This makes sense because if somebody's paying rent, even if they're not there, you don't have a right to remove their home from the community, okay? Number three, the community owner is required to notify all lien holders before they undertake this special proceeding. So depending on the type of home it is and how old it is, there's a specific search that needs to be done. Again, this makes sense if there's financing on it and the home is going to be removed or destroyed, a lien holder should have the right to intervene and be heard. Okay. And then number four, the last one, and this is again where the document everything advice comes into play. You have to show at least two of the following: that the resident removed the majority of their personal property, so they've abandoned the home. Utility service has been cut off for at least 60 days, that the home is in substantial disrepair or is generally uninhabitable, or they say other objective evidence of abandonment that would be suitable for a court. So these are all of the things that you would have to plead in a petition in order to bring a special proceeding to have an abandoned home removed from your property, okay? Say you're able to show all of those things in a court, the question is always, well, what do I get, right? Do I get a piece of paper? What happens next? You get a court order, a declaration that the manufactured home is abandoned. And after you get that declaration, you can then go back to the court and get a warrant, like you would for an eviction, that would direct the sheriff to remove the home from the park within 30 days. Again, very consistent with manufactured housing eviction laws. Sometimes, if you don't want it removed, you can, under special circumstances, ask that the home, for good cause, either be demolished on the spot. So a home that's in really bad condition might not be able to be moved, right? The minute you try to move it, it's going to fall apart. It's unsafe. So special circumstances, you can get it demolished, or sometimes for good cause shown, you can sell it. Because abandoned means that, you guys can sell it and potentially recover some of the money that is owed to you. Something that will take some people by surprise at the end of all of this, that the cost of removing it and destroying the home is charged against the person who brings the petition. So the community owner will have to pay for the removal and destruction of the home. You can always, try to charge that back and collect it from the tenant, but I'm sure, as many of you know, large judgments or small judgments against tenants who are gone are, you might be able to get it, but they're not easy to enforce. So it's definitely a cost benefit analysis, and it can be very expensive because you have to pay a lawyer, you have to go through this process, and then you have to pay to have the home ultimately removed. But a lot of these homes are really bad eyesores and they are hurting your community. So sometimes it's a necessary thing to do. Sometimes people abandon it and leave their stuff behind, a little bit of stuff or a lot of stuff, unfortunately, sometimes. What do you have to do with their stuff? Well, if you get the warrant, you have to pay and store their stuff for 3 months. After 3 months, you'll be relieved of that obligation and the personal property can be destroyed. Again, chargeable back to the tenant who leaves. Okay. What if the resident is deceased? What happens then? Right, so we talked about if somebody just leaves generally and just leaves all their stuff behind for whatever reason. We've talked about what happens if they're evicted and then they don't do anything with their home. Now, what if the resident is deceased? So by statute, I'm sure you all know, homes that were built after July of 1994 are titled like cars. Before that, you would transfer a manufactured home via bill of sale. Under New York law, real property would transfer automatically upon somebody's death. That does not happen for manufactured homes. If you go on the DMV's website, and that's where this information is pulled from, it specifically lays out how to transfer title for a manufactured home when the owner is deceased. distributees. So that means the husband or wife left behind, the kids that are left behind, whoever it was left to in a will, they do not take automatic ownership of the manufactured home. They cannot sign the same affidavits and forms that you might be familiar with to transfer a vehicle title when somebody passes away. You need the decedent's title, and you need documentation from a surrogate's court. So whether that's an administrator, a public administrator, the executor, somebody who has the authority to actually transfer title. That can be a complicating factor, and it can make life difficult because it is not always easy to track down, who is next of kin, right? How do we find their estranged husband and wife, or their children that they weren't speaking to, or the kids don't want anything to do with the manufactured home that was left behind, and they say, don't worry about it, it's your problem. Well, generally as a creditor, which once something's been abandoned, the community owner is a creditor because they owe you rent, you can petition to have these estates opened, and you would be working with your public administrator in your county to get that process started along with an estate lawyer. So 2 pieces of practical advice to avoid the headaches that come with this is 1, know your neighbors, encourage everybody to have good estate planning done ahead of time. That makes it very helpful if the people in everybody's lives know, I'm the executor, they own the home, here's what I have to do when so-and-so passes away. It's not an expense that everybody's willing to undertake, but it's certainly a benefit to the community that they leave behind. The second is when somebody's not deceased and they are leaving, perhaps they just can't afford to move the home with them, right? They owe more in back rent than they owe on their home. A lot of times you can, negotiate with people and have them sign those homes over to the community before they vacate. And I'm sure that that's something that you've all seen be done before. Obviously, the paperwork that Joel was talking about comes into play even in those circumstances because that is a sale or a transfer of the home. So just something to keep in mind when you might be at eviction court and somebody suggests that as a simple solution. The other question, John asked me to kind of address is, what's the status of evictions right now? I don't know how much of an issue this is for all of your communities, but it's certainly an issue for a lot of community owners that I work with. I'm sure you all know that the new moratorium that the new governor signed was extended through January 15th of 2022. It prohibits residential evictions when the tenant has submitted a hardship declaration. Because the Supreme Court of the United States said that landlords need to have a say, the new law does have a mechanism for challenging a hardship declaration. So if you know that the resident has, they're an essential worker, they've been going to work the whole time and they're just using this as an excuse not to pay rent because they know they can't be evicted, there is a way to challenge their hardship declaration, and that's through a motion. But it is not, I will tell you, very easy to prove that somebody is lying under oath when all they need to do is basically stand up and reiterate exactly what they've said in their affidavit. So what is a hardship? I'm sure you've all seen the hardship declaration that New York State put out. They have to be experiencing a financial hardship, a loss of household income, increase in expenses, childcare responsibilities, moving expense difficulty, which is what a lot of people are saying now, right? If I leave, where am I going? Housing prices are, very extreme. Like Joel was just saying, there's not a lot of new homes around that are available for purchase or to move into. And somebody in this industry, it'd be very easy for a tenant to say, do you know how expensive it is to move a manufactured home out of a park, right? And I will tell you that a lot of judges don't know the answer to that question, and they would probably be surprised to find out how much it would cost. And the cost of moving, I think, is going to be persuasive to a judge that, you're going to be looking at that January 15th, 2022 date. I have no insider information, but I will tell you, I have a hunch that that date will be extended again because I do not see New York State letting evictions begin in the middle of winter. You know, I just don't see that practically happening. If it does happen, I know that there will be a lot of landlords who will be relieved, but ultimately I'm not sure that that's, you know, a reality of what's coming. So when it comes to evictions, I will tell you that it is extremely important that you have a lawyer who practices in the area, meaning substantive area and geographical area where you're located. Every court is different, every judge is different, and they all think they know the law and they all have different understandings. And the most important thing that you can do is find a lawyer who knows what's going to happen in that particular courtroom every time they go, and that they have a good relationship with the judge who's going to be hearing your case. I think that that is, you know, just across the board what you need to do in order to be successful at this point when it is very difficult to evict anybody. With that, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer some general questions as John previewed kind of at the beginning. Because I don't represent you, I don't know the names of your communities, I don't know if I have a conflict of interest, I can't give you individual or personalized advice. That's why this has been a pretty high level overview of the law and the different topics that, you know, John, Joel, and I wanted to present to you today. But if you have questions, you know, about anything in my presentation, I am happy to answer them if I can.
Laura, I have a question. So you mentioned that you should make sure that your attorney has a good relationship with the judge that's going to be hearing your case or whatever. How are you able to do that? How do you do that?
So that's part of your interview process with any attorney that you go to hire, right? You want to know about that attorney's experience in doing evictions, and specifically manufactured housing evictions, because there are, you know, there's a lot of similarities, but manufactured housing is a very unique part of the law, and there are very specific things that govern it. You know, timing is different, etc. So it's part of your interview process. You know, how often are you in eviction court? Do you know who the judge is? Have you ever appeared in front of that judge before? Those are all reasonable questions for a client to ask their lawyer before they engage them.
Would you be able to provide us with a list of questions that we should ask?
I can't provide you with a list of questions to interview a lawyer. I'd probably get myself in trouble with my colleagues as well. But I think it's just, you know, good common sense in, are you competent to handle this for me? Have you done this before? And do you know where you're going? Honestly, sometimes the answer might be no, and you might be hard pressed to find a lawyer who's appeared in XYZ town court on an eviction. But if they have experience doing it in other parts of the county or whatever it is, you know, it's just a good question to ask. I certainly don't have experience in every single town court in all of Monroe County. That would be an unreasonable representation on my part, but you can generally understand how things are done in this part of the state. So I don't want to discourage anybody and say, you know, well, I live in the town of Hamlin and this person's never been to Hamlin, because you might have bad luck finding any attorney who's ever been to that particular town court. But it's just good to look for somebody who works in that area.
So, and, you know, when you're interviewing an attorney, how apt are they to answer your questions honestly when you say, you know, how often have you been in this, you know, in this type of court? And do you know this, the judges who will be appearing in front of you? Like how often are they going to actually give you the right answer? I mean, an honest answer.
So I can't speak for every other attorney across New York State, but I can tell you that all lawyers are subject to ethical rules, and those rules cover dishonesty to courts, to clients. It's not acceptable to be dishonest with your clients. You should not misrepresent yourself or your experience. But that is, you know, a slippery scale, right? When somebody says, I can do that, I've done it before, you know, you have to just be a good interviewer at that point to see if that person is telling you the truth. And they might be telling you their truth, right? I don't want to accuse anybody of being dishonest or overselling.
Mhm.
And actually, it's been my experience when I was working with attorneys, that most of them had said, oh, manufactured housing evictions, no, thank you. So, I mean, it wasn't that they were jumping through hoops to take my business when I was looking for an attorney. It took me a while to find an attorney that was willing to do even local attorneys weren't willing to touch manufactured housing evictions because of the specialty that it takes to understand how to do a manufactured housing eviction.
Thank you.
Carol, you're you want to unmute yourself.
Muted?
There you
Oh.
go. You're good.
Okay. Is there a general packet that one can get pertaining to this here with the information? Could we get that from you, or where could one get that?
Maura, can I get your PowerPoint?
Yeah, I should be able to give you my PowerPoint.
Would that be cool?
Does that answer
Carol?
your question?
Yeah. Sure.
You got it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me or for Joel?
Just something I wanted to point out on both my presentation and Maura's presentation, that these are not evergreen presentations from us. The laws change frequently. Just to use an example from my realm, I deal a lot with codes, and I've had multiple changes to my presentations that I give to people over the last 18 months because there's been so many changes to both the New York State Building Code and the Federal Building Code. So when I tell you today that you need XYZ paperwork, that's the paperwork you would need in October of 2021. To say that that's the same paperwork that you're going to need in February may change. Just to use an example, right now, the Department of Energy is looking to enact further energy standards on manufactured homes. And some of that stuff is paperwork that would be required that you notify your customer that they're in compliance with Department of Energy standards. It hasn't passed yet, but it's going to soon, more than likely. So when I say that this is the paperwork you have to do, it's today. And I think it's the same with Maura's presentation, that this is eviction law as it sits today. So, if you get these presentations, don't look at them 3 years from now and say, oh, this is what I have to do, because it will likely have changed at that point. So it's kind of a disclaimer, but I really just want to put it out there that these things do change frequently.
Well, hopefully everybody has a sense of what are the issues on the landscape, to be asking about and thinking about. Carol, you look like you had another question.
Yeah. Talking about the, energy, I contacted a company, Global Dwelling, because when I purchased my home, I wasn't given the option to get better insulation under my home. And it's very cold in the wintertime. And as I'm getting older, I feel it more. But is there something that I have to do if I am interested and I get this company to do something they come in with meters to see if my windows are, leaking and check that everything is working properly? Is there something more that I need to do?
Do you mean
getting
legally?
a company in?
Do you mean legally? What?
Yeah, is it what we're saying? Is it it's not an issue for me to bring someone in to check the home to see how well insulated and that it's up to code as far as
So as
for the inspection, no, you wouldn't have to have anything special. However, if they're going to do any work on your home, much like you need to be a certified retailer to sell a manufactured home, you need to be a certified mechanic or installer to do any kind of work on a manufactured home. And much like the individual homeowner is supposed to be certified, when they rewrote the codes in 2020, they made it that to work on a manufactured home, even if you own it yourself, you need to be a certified mechanic. So if they were to do insulation work on your home, that's considered a structural change. You would need a building permit and a certified mechanic to do that work.
And a
Is
lot of
that
the,
right?
well, and that's not crazy because a lot of the community action agencies across New York have staff that are certified. I took the course. So, yeah.
And I'm just curious though, because there's so much underneath the house, the piping and all that. Like if they did, for an example, like an insulation foam, you know, or however, I don't know what they're going to do. How does that work? I mean, I wouldn't want to interfere with any of that because if, you know, you need to get to, you know, those things underneath the house, what
Well,
does one do?
Well, Carol, I'm gonna bracket that because that's a whole
An
issue.
issue?
That's a whole
Okay.
nother workshop about
Okay.
weatherization, and we can do that if you want to get into weatherization. It's fascinating, and I learned more than I ever thought I'd ever need to know about it. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yes, there's
Okay.
and there's all sorts of differences in the ceilings and the roofs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Okay.
so any other questions for Joel or Maura related to empty lots and zombie homes? Cleaned it up pretty good. The plate is clean. Well, I want to thank you guys. This was a lot. We got a lot to digest. I saw Alice taking notes furiously, and we've got this recorded. So we can revisit this if anybody wants. I'll put it up on YouTube and you'll be able to, I'll give you a link to it. It'll be privately. So thank you, Joel. Thank you, Maura. And we're going to continue with our work leadership series. And I look forward to seeing you all down the road on the next few sessions. Thanks for coming.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
John, how do I get, you're gonna send a link so I could watch this from the beginning?
Yes, I'm gonna send out an email. I still have to put together. I have to edit the last one and put that together. So I have to do that work, but I will. That was the one on how to manage your property manager. So I'm gonna put that together, get it up on YouTube, and send out the link.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good to
Sounds
see you
good.
all.
Thank you, John.
Same
Bye.
here. Thank you, John. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.